we read those words in verse 34, Jesus said, it actually is extended. There's actually an extended version of Jesus said. If you read the original text, it actually is a tense that says, and he kept on saying with the relentless ticking of a clock. So it's almost like every moment he is saying the same thing again and again. And for the next 3 hours, between 9 o'clock and 12 o'clock, Jesus kept on saying, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. All through that 3 hours, as he was writhing up and down in agony, trying to manage the pain and the agony of the cross, he kept on saying, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Why did he say that, and to whom did he say that? Well, the Bible gives us some illustrations and a detail of who was around the cross that day. What kind of people were around the cross that day that Jesus expressed spontaneously forgiveness on their behalf? And this afternoon, for a few moments, I wonder if we'll look at these people around the cross. Because all of us have met them. All of us encounter the type of people that are in this scenario day by day. Some of us have encountered them this week. Some of us, unfortunately, have been them. But all of us need God to say to us, Father, forgive them. So who does he meet? Who does he meet in this situation? How does love deal with the transgressions? And again, Jesus reaches out to those that are around him. You see, the first group are there. It says, and they divided up his clothes by casting lots. They're those who take from him what didn't belong to them. They were taking from him that which didn't belong to him. And he said to them, Father, forgive them. You see, Jesus had only 5 garments. Some of us have 5 wardrobes full of plenty garments. But Jesus only had 5 garments. And 4 of them had already been given away. But the one most intimate garment, the garment that was closest to Jesus, was seamless. It was all fabricated in one thing. And they didn't want to tear it in parts. They didn't want to remove it in bits. So they were casting lots for it. And they were deciding who was going to get that which didn't belong to them. And they were playing cards or whatever way they did that to make sure that one person got which didn't belong to them. They were taking what didn't belong to them of his most intimate nature. You know, I believe in our lives there are always takers in our lives. Takers who take things from our lives that don't belong to them. Take things that were not theirs, but they take from us. Whether they take from you your reputation, and it's taken from you and abused. Whether it's your relationships and somebody has taken that from you. Whether it was the trajectory of your life that has been taken by somebody else and it doesn't belong to you. Or whether it is something of the most intimate nature. Whether it's your innocence that has been taken from you. Whether it's the experiences of life that have been taken from you by somebody in your past. And you're sitting here this afternoon realizing that there have been takers in your life. Just as Jesus had the takers that morning, people who took things from him that didn't belong to him. And Jesus responded and said, Father, forgive them. How do we respond to the takers in our life today? How have you responded to those who've taken something from you that was so intimate and close to you? Nobody knows. The people sitting around you don't know today. But you know what's been taken from you. You know that somebody has taken and hold of something that was so dear to you. And it didn't belong to them, but it's been taken. Whether it was just your friendship that was taken from you. Whether it was what you believed about yourself that was taken from you. But today, you sit here knowing that somebody's taken from you that which didn't belong. And Jesus says, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. There's the takers. Then there's the watchers. It says in verse 35, the people stood watching. You know, you think, well, that's fairly innocent. But the language that is used there is fascinating. It's about people who take up a stance and say, I'm going to scrutinize what's going on here. I'm going to take in every detail. I'm going to observe everything that's happening with perhaps a negative view, with perhaps just an inquisitive view. But certainly I'm going to observe everything that's going to go on there. I'm going to take it all in, but don't expect me to give anything back. Don't expect me to get involved. Don't expect me to do anything on your behalf, Jesus. I want to get all the detail that is there. I want to see what's going on, but don't expect me to contribute, and don't expect me to help, and don't expect me to do anything. Closely watching, but never actually doing. You know, there's watchers in all of our lives who watch what's going on in your life. See sometimes the difficulties that you're in. See sometimes the trauma that you've been through. See sometimes the problems that you have, and yet do nothing about it. Sometimes one of the most frustrating things in church life actually is so many people see what needs to be done but actually don't do anything. And sometimes the challenge for me inside is I need to forgive because they don't have an idea. They don't understand or don't perceive or don't know or don't recognize, just as Jesus did. Father, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. But maybe there's people observing you. I remember several years ago, a man came to me. It was an urgent kind of meeting, and he said, please come, I need to see you. And I went and we met together. And he said, I've been observing you and watching you for some time. And I'm not entirely sure if you're really able to be the pastor of the church, because I see what's going on in the life of your children. I see that they're doing this and they're doing that. And I see that they don't really engage in a Sunday morning. And I see that they don't really live a great Christian life. So I'm not entirely sure if you should be leading the church. And I was so taken aback that somebody had observed that kind of level of detail and scrutiny in my life. But we all have watchers who are watching you and I. I trust that if we're watching to encourage. We're watching to lift up. We're watching to bear burdens. We're watching to help. Many people here could have taken a glass of water and given it to Jesus. Many people could have taken something and wiped his brow, or many people could have done something on that morning of the crucifixion, but they stood still and watched. I turned to the man and I said, hey, I'm grateful for your observations. They're actually true. At this time, my kids are not doing the very best. So I said to him, if I bow my head, will you pray for me, please, and pray for my family? And he prayed for me, and I don't know how he felt at the end of it, but I felt good, and released him into the observations that he was making. Watchers that Jesus says, Father, forgive them, because they don't know what they do. And there were more around the cross. There were those that said the rulers even sneered at him or turned up the nose at him. That's what the word literally means. It turns up the nose at, to mock and to compare and to say, actually, Jesus, you're not as worthy as we are. You don't carry the value that we do. You're not as good as we are. You thought you were, you said you were, but actually you're not as good as everybody says you are. You said you could do this, but you can't do it. It's the put down, it's the criticism, it's the humiliation, it's the insult, it's the name calling, it's the comparison that says, I'm actually better than you are. I don't know if you've ever been at the receiving end of any of that. I don't know if anybody in your past has said to you, actually you're not as good as what you think you are. Or they've said to you, actually you're not as worthy of living as you may think you are. Actually you've no reason to experience the joy that is in your life. Actually you've no reason to get ahead. When you see who you are, and we make comparisons about our appearance and about our passport and about our country of origin, about the job that we have, about the intellect that we carry, about the people that we hang out with, about the friends that we're around with, about the husband that we have or the wife that we have. All the time people are trying to pull you down that they may be larger. And Jesus said to the crowd that were there that day, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. In Mark chapter 15, there's a little bit extended story of some of the goings on around the cross. And it says in verse 29, those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, so you who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, come down from the cross and save yourself. In the same way, the chief priests and the teachers of the law mocked him among themselves. He saved others, they said, but he can't save himself. You see, some people will talk behind your back. Just like the chief priests were doing. They were talking among themselves about who he was. Have you ever stumbled into a room where you know people have been talking about you? Hello? Huh? Come on. And there's that awkwardness, and Frosty the Snowman is there as well, and you could break the ice. And you walk into the room and you realize, I've been the subject of the conversation. I've been the one that they've been gossiping and tittle-tattling about and speaking about and telling things about that they don't really know, or they've only got half the story. I don't know if you've ever been in that situation. Most of us, I'm sure, have. Where people are talking about you behind your back. What do? Oh, it's so easy to let that build up inside, isn't it? And you fill the gaps with speculation of he said, she said, they must think, they must know, all that stuff. And it builds up and builds up and builds up, huh? And Jesus is in that place on the cross. And they're talking about him behind his back, muttering and whispering. And I wonder if he's there thinking, I wonder if one of them is going to say, this is unjust. I wonder if one of them is going to say, bring the man down. He's suffered enough. I wonder, and he's thinking what's going on. You know when you go in a room and he's going on, and all of a sudden it stops. You think, oh, they're talking about moi. They must have roast pasta on for lunch today, whatever it is. We've all been there, but it's how we respond. And Jesus says, Father, forgive them, because they don't know what they're doing. The Bible says that there were those who were passing by. You know, Calvary was an interesting place. It was actually the shortcut between A and B. It was a quick way of getting from one place in Jerusalem to another. And people would just be passing by and actually ignoring what was going on. Because what was going on was less important than where they had to get to and what they were doing and what was going on in their life. And so they would just pass by what was happening there. Can you imagine that? 3 men were dying on crosses and people were passing by. I don't know if you've ever had somebody pass you by in your life. I remember again in this place, somebody kindly came up to me at the end of a service and said, you know, you've hurt me this morning. I said, oh, I'm so sorry. What did I do? He said, well, you passed me by. I came out to try and catch your attention and speak to you, and you walked right past me. And I probably, more of you in this room have experienced the same, and I'm sorry. I had somebody in my sights, and I was going to have a question and speak to somebody, and that was my B. That's where I was going, and I was standing in A, and I was just looking to get from A to B, but of course, the person was standing there in the middle. I ignored them and passed right by. It was a great reminder of the pain in the heart that we can cause when we just don't take time to engage with people. That B is so important in our lives that we miss out the people around us. That getting to where we want to get to stops us from taking time to communicate with those that are around. And it was a great reminder for me. If I'm honest, I've probably still done it again. In those moments where you want to see somebody, you talk to somebody, and others come into your pathway and you ignore or you set aside. But people were doing that for Jesus. It says passers-by were there. And all that happened is they would join with the crowd and insult and whatever. Oh, Jesus says, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing.